Hi, I'm Carla D. Tillery, and welcome to the Chair Chronicles. I'm your life coach and your favorite auntie. You know, that aunt that is so not afraid to tell you the truth and help you see things just a little clearer, and you love her advice. Well, as a certified life coach with over 2 decades of experience, I'm very passionate about helping you find your happiness. So pull up a chair and let's have a talk. Hey, LA.
Hey, now.
We are still talking about relationships.
My favorite subject.
All right,
okay.
So this is today's question.
Okay.
Would you relocate for love?
Absolutely.
You
I'm
would,
there.
I'm there. Okay, well,
I'm
wait
there.
a minute. you ready. You ready to find that guy and you'll jump ship?
Yeah, let me slow down. I got excited there for a minute. I got excited just for a minute. Let me slow down. Because you're going to give us some good tips and thoughts about that. It's a great question, though.
I think there's just so many things you need to think about first.
Yeah.
And one of the first things really is this relationship going somewhere?
Right.
I mean, you don't want to just do that prematurely.
Right.
Without understanding, is this relationship, does it have commitment? Does it have longevity?
Right.
What kind of relationship is it? You know, why are you willing to just, pack your bags and move to a different, place, different location? Right. So there's a lot of questions you need to ask yourself about that. And the very first one, like I said, is, what's this relationship about?
Right. Right. What is the final result that you're looking for?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and it's a big decision. I mean, I've seen people do it and not work out, So.
Right. It's a huge decision.
Yeah.
Huge decision.
Yeah.
So a little bit about my backstory.
Yes.
So I'm originally from North Carolina, from the Tar Heels state.
All right, Tar Heels.
And I now live in Connecticut. So how did I get here?
Yeah.
That's first of all, it's a 12-hour drive.
Yeah.
It's a long ways away.
Yeah.
So at the prospect of, of my relationship and thinking that it was going to go somewhere, I needed to know before I moved that this was the right thing to do. Okay. And fortunately for me, I got married and then I moved. I was like, you gonna put a ring on this if you expect me to come to Connecticut 12 hours away from home.
I don't blame you.
So yes, so I got married one week and I was finishing undergrad, got married, and 2 weeks. No, I don't even know my own story, right? So let me take a step back, right? Yeah. I finished my undergraduate study, graduated one Sunday. 2 Sundays later, I got married and then moved. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a huge event for me because all I knew was home. All I knew was North Carolina. Right. That's where I was at in college. And then after that, I literally just packed my bags. I got married. And we drove back up to Connecticut and we made Connecticut our home.
Talk about whirlwind.
So I did relocate for love.
Right.
But that was a conversation we had,
right,
of course, before we got married and made that decision about where we would actually stay.
And then you were married before you came.
And
you got married before you came.
Yeah. So I think it lessened the risk a little bit of... It lessened it a little bit, right? Because you don't know. You're
charting the unknown.
You were hoping that the marriage is going to work out,
right?
But it lessened the risk a little bit because I had a commitment, and we were going to try to work on this and really build a life together,
right?
So for those reasons, I relocated. Wow. And some people, are afraid to do that, and then others are ready to take that leap and I'm out of here. Maybe because they don't like where they live in.
That could be it. It's like I'm ready to go.
Sometimes you just don't like where you are, and you're looking for something new, and you're looking for something different. Right. So you'll hop ship any minute. You just need somebody to kind of say, "Come on."
Well, I thought about it. It was someone that I was dating, and we had a long distance relationship, and it was going very well, and I felt like he was the one, and I believe he thought I was the one, and we talked about that. He did a stint in the Navy in Connecticut, but he was also from the Tar Heels, and I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it.
You couldn't move.
I couldn't move.
Okay.
At the time, I was raising a niece and a nephew, but he was all for like, bring them with you and let's.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I always think about, if I had made that choice, what would life be like? Yeah. Yeah. So, I can't say now that, I I'm so disappointed I didn't do it, but I often wonder sometimes.
Right.
What would have happened. So this is a great question. A great question.
Relocating.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think you do need to kind of ask yourself is like, are there any other connections in the new location?
Right.
Do you have any friends or family there? What would that experience look like socially for you? Because I think that's important.
Absolutely. You need a support system.
You're going to need a support
regardless,
system.
Yeah.
And you also need to develop your own support system. Right. And what I mean by that is, because I still believe there's a level of independence that needs to be maintained, even in a relationship.
Right.
And so you're going to need to develop your own social network. And sometimes if you are, more of an introvert, it may be more difficult for you to get out there and to get involved in the community or to go to places where you can find some friends and kind of develop some relationships. For me, when I moved, I literally didn't have any blood related relatives that lived in Connecticut.
Wow.
And so it was up to me to sort of kind of build my own
village.
Create my own village. Yeah. And luckily, I'm a little outgoing, all right? That helped.
It helps.
And so it wasn't that difficult for me.
Right.
And I did know some people here, and I was just able to kind of build those relationships because now we were able to kind of see each other in person. So it worked out.
Do you think it's really worth doing your homework? So
yes,
you've talked about it, and where the person lives, you've gone to visit, but you really don't know the place. But really, is it really about you doing your homework?
So hopefully you can take some time to really have some long vacation or some long weeks. You need to experience the day, the night there.
Right.
You need to see what the neighborhoods are like. You need to see what types of things would you normally do, and are they close by? Because some people don't want to drive long distance for entertainment or activity, right? So you need to get a whole sense of the geography and the place and everything that's surrounding where you would live to see if it's a place you want to make your home.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about moving, right? So you need to have your eyes on the ground, and not just go there during one season. I would also say try a different season. Right. Now, for someone coming from North Carolina, Connecticut, you gotta imagine.
I can only imagine when you got here and it was cold.
I said, "What is this?"
I'm sure.
And all the snow.
And you were ready to go
ice.
back, right?
I wasn't. I mean, I was happy. I wanted to be here, but let me tell you. I was struggling.
Some New England weather.
I was struggling.
Yes. Yeah.
I was struggling. And one of the things is, so North Carolina is very flat.
Right.
Connecticut has a lot of hills.
Yeah.
So what would happen is when I first moved to Connecticut, I literally was getting headaches and dizzy.
Oh, wow.
I was becoming very dizzy in the car. So because of the altitude changes and all of that, it took me a while for my body to acclimate to a new location, because the climate was very different. So there's a lot of things that you need to experience.
I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your health.
I literally
and,
used to have to put the seat back and lay my head down because I would get dizzy.
These are nuggets. I hope you're out there taking notes, because I would not have even thought about that. And that's true. That's very interesting. What is your physical condition?
Right.
It sounds like, oh my gosh, you have to create this big plan, but you do need to plan.
You need to plan. Yeah. And it's fine if you can make it work. I'm not saying that if that's a no deal. No, kind of like if you're going to have some different health impacts.
Right.
But yeah, it is something that you need to think about, particularly if you go into an area that has a different climate and is a different geography from where you're presently located.
Right. So I guess the biggest question is about moving in with that person, or moving down and just establishing your own place, and then you continue to see each other, but you have your place, he has his place, or is it about moving in together?
That's a good question. So a lot of people do. A lot of young people is what I'm experiencing with people that I know, actually move in together.
Right.
And I wasn't raised that way, so I got married first, and I follow kind of like those traditional. And some of the young people, I know y'all gonna say that's kind of like archaic. Who does that?
Well, I do that. I still do that.
so that was my past. So it is a personal question. That person will need to respond to. Right. But I would say that there is a certain level of security in knowing that you can take care of yourself in the new location,
right?
And you're not dependent upon someone else and their income. And I'm talking particularly if you're not married,
right?
Because what happens if that relationship doesn't hold itself together,
right?
And if it doesn't, who's got to move out? Was your name on the lease, or did you go in and buy a mortgage together? And it just makes things a lot more complicated. Right. So I think there is a level before you get married. I think you need to maintain your independence and know you can stand on your own 2 feet.
Absolutely. I mean, and
that's for the guys or girls. It doesn't matter.
And I think personally, I would want to know that I have a job lined up before I went. And again, it's not about, like you said, you want a level of independence, and you don't want to have your partner feel like, okay, you get there and then you start looking, and that could work as well. You get there, and again, it's about the level of where the relationship is going.
Right. Exactly. And that's that's for you and your partner to kind of figure that out.
Right.
Figure that out.
And there has to be some trust. There has to be some trust,
right?
I mean, you really are throwing caution to the wind when you really think about it. You're willing to pick up and move,
right? So trust and commitment.
Yeah.
Because you hopefully want whoever you're relocating for. Right. You want that person to really respect the fact that you're making a huge commitment to uproot your life and to relocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's big.
So that is absolutely huge. Yeah. Because relocating is not always easy. No. I mean, you're starting in a new place or for some. And I mean, and even if it's familiar,
right.
It's still a huge commitment to relocate for someone else.
And I think I might have done it had I not had my niece and nephew. I really was thinking about their security. Most of my family's here, and I have family in the South as well, but it's not the same.
So that's a good point. What if you have children and you're following your love interests?
Right.
So that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah.
And whether the person or your love interest is he, the father or the mother of the children, or whether they're from a different relationship.
Right.
And what's the experience going to be like for the children that have to relocate if that is the scenario.
Exactly.
So then they've got to get used to it. If they're children of school age, then it's all about the schools and making sure that they are finding some level of comfort with the move as well. So it could be so many different layers.
Variables.
And again, it's so many questions you need to be asking yourself about the new location.
And you don't wait till you get there to start asking these questions. Right. You talk about it before you make that decision. And it's the same thing, like the partner that you're going to, whether it's the father or the mother. What kind of relationship have you been introduced to the children? Are they used to seeing you? Are they used to being around you? His extended or her extended family. I mean, you're going to be exposed to them. You're going to be around them. So, you kind of want to know what that dynamic is going to look like.
You have to spend some time there before you make the move.
Yeah.
And you need to ask yourself so many different questions. Yeah. So you're right. Yeah. So who else are you going to be connected to or meeting or hanging around?
Right.
Who's going to become a part of that support network, right?
Yeah.
And how do you interact with them?
Right.
And if you have kids, how are they going to interact? How are they going to be received?
Yeah.
Right? Establishing, are your children those children who have difficult times starting new? Right? Starting new relationships or starting in new places, and what level of adjustment, how much time do they need to make adjustments? And sometimes you won't have the answers to all of the questions, but it certainly should be questions that you're thinking about at least.
Right. And again, we're not talking about this in a way that makes you, put up your guard and say, oh my gosh, this process is too heavy. This is too much.
Right.
We want you to be excited about it. The prospect of moving, I was like over the moon thinking about it and what it could look like and what it could be and all of those nuances. But we also have to look at things in a practical way.
Practical. That's right.
We have to look at it in a practical way.
And I want to touch back on the point you brought up was about employment. You know, so I don't know. It depends on the relationship and what those discussions lead to. But is it necessary for you to work? And if so, will you wait till you get there to find work? Or will you try to find work in advance of that? You know, and so all of that comes into play. And sometimes it's difficult to find work when you're not there. You know, that can be a challenge. And do you have savings built up? Like, how do you continue to support yourself while you're looking for a job?
Exactly.
Do you have the money to even move? Come on now.
Listen.
Come on now. Come on now. Are you prepared? Are you even prepared?
Things have to be moved. Furniture, you know, yourself, your car, you know. Yes.
So do you even have the means to actually physically relocate?
That's it.
And sometimes we are not the best at financial planning.
No.
And so sometimes we can go and relocate and already begin with a strain. Already begin with debt. And we're starting off with all of that stress from the get-go.
And there goes back to that question about how solid is this relationship? Where is it going? I believe if you can answer that question and with clarity and with that knowing that this is the right decision, it will set everything else in motion.
Right.
Because you'll have those difficult conversations. Let's talk about finances. How do you pay your bills? And I mean, hopefully by the time that you get ready to move, you already know these things. But again, like you talked about, employment. You know, there are a lot of what do they call it? Tele interviews where you can do it. But boots on the ground. Literally being there to be able to check out the job market. You know, what you have your degree in. Will you be working in that field? You know, how far will you have to commute? So,
good questions. Okay, so now let's put another question out there related to this.
All right.
Will you stay there if the relationship doesn't work? You've got to think about that as well, right? So even for me, so while I have, you know, I'm fortunate I'm still married, so this is not my specific situation. But I did have to think, like, well, what would happen would I still stay in Connecticut? You know, how, and I think sometimes it really depends on how deeply you've been able to root yourself. Because if the relationship doesn't work, then you might, you know, throughout your searching and trying to figure out what your next steps are, you might figure out that you need to move. That you need to take a new path altogether. And in some cases that works, that may be the response. And in other cases you might say, you know what, I really adapted. I love this place. I made a life for myself. I ain't going nowhere. And so you stay there. And then if children are involved, then again, that's a whole nother layer. Right?
Absolutely.
A whole nother layer as to whether what decision you'll need to make if the relationship doesn't work. But it is something that you at least need to give some thought to. You never want to go into a relationship thinking that it's going to fail. But you need to be prepared and have tools and resources in case it does.
And you touched on that earlier when you said about making your own connections, creating your own village, because that can be key. So if things don't work out, do I have a support system? As I make that decision about whether I leave or whether I stay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you have a support system? So these are some great thoughts.
Very
right.
Great. Yeah.
So hopefully you're able to kind of take away a lot of things from this.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
About just making sure, does the relationship have value? Right. Is it what kind of risk is it for you to actually make the move? Because you need to understand where the relationship is headed and whether there's a commitment. And of course, as we talked, if there's children, there's, you know, a whole that brings a whole nother level of complexity. But you know, at the end of the day, you need to spend some time there. You need to make sure that this is a place you can see yourself living and growing and sustaining yourself, and of course living your best life. I don't care where you are. You need to figure out where can you actually do that and still live your best life.
Great advice.
So if you want to relocate, Give this some thought. Hey, listen, we've enjoyed this time. Please share your comments. Give us some thoughts about this discussion. If you want to send them to me via email, it's carladtillery@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. We appreciate you so much. So stay tuned, stay connected on The Chair Chronicles.